let us really take a step back and look at this supposed curse. Every single time Trina truly opens her heart, lets her guard down, and allows herself to be vulnerable with a man, that man seems explicitly destined for horrific tragedy. This is no longer just a string of bad luck. It is a recurring, brutal motif that is starting to feel incredibly heavy and almost cruel. She is a character who loves so deeply, purely, and fiercely, yet the narrative universe continuously punishes her for that exact vulnerability. The writers have essentially turned her beautiful heart into a graveyard of lost potential and shattered dreams. Think about the devastating history here. We all remember the absolute soul-crushing devastation of losing Spencer. He was ripped away from her life after a series of terrifying, traumatic events, leaving a massive, gaping void that fans are still actively mourning today. And before him, there was Rory, the sweet, earnest, dedicated cop, who also met a tragically violent and untimely end. These were not just simple breakups or dramatic misunderstandings. These were brutal, permanent, life-altering losses. Trina has had to learn how to survive the unimaginable grief of burying the men she cares about, and that kind of profound trauma fundamentally changes a person from the inside out. It is impossible to overstate just how deeply the ghost of Spencer still haunts every single decision Trina makes today. When you lose someone who was essentially your twin flame, it leaves a permanent, jagged scar on your psyche. Every time she looks at a new man, whether it is Kai or anyone else, there has to be that lingering, terrifying voice in the very back of her head whispering that it will all inevitably end in tears and blood. The writers have painted her into a corner where her trauma is her defining characteristic. She wears her grief like a heavy, invisible cloak, and we as the audience feel the crushing weight of it every single time she tries to force a brave smile. This brings us directly to Kai, and this is where it gets incredibly interesting, guys. Kai is stepping up to the plate. He is observing, he is noticing that Drew is miraculously regaining his mobility, and he is actively, dangerously working with Trina to save Drew from Willow. But in the twisted world of daytime drama, being the observant, morally upright hero who happens to know the villain's darkest, most guarded secret is practically a signed death sentence. Kai is playing a very dangerous, high-stakes game with a woman who currently feels she has absolutely nothing left to lose. We have to talk about Willow for a second to truly understand the threat level here. The Willow we are watching right now is absolutely not the sweet, passive, forgiving girl from years ago. She is ruthless, she is fiercely ambitious, and above all else, she is terrified. She knows that if Drew fully recovers and speaks out, her entire life, her freedom, and her carefully constructed empire will completely crumble to dust. When a character is backed into a dark corner like that, they stop thinking rationally. They start thinking purely about survival. And survival often means eliminating the immediate threat by any means necessary. Just look at how Willow has been operating lately to anchor this point. She is faking physical attacks. She is dramatically throwing herself into shallow fountains to manipulate the police. And she is desperately trying to secure illegal blackmail material. She is operating on pure, unadulterated, toxic desperation. If Willow realizes for even 1 second that Kai knows the truth about Drew's recovery, she will not hesitate to silence him forever. In her warped mind, Kai is just collateral damage in her ongoing war to maintain control over her fragile reality. Eliminating a witness like him would be the ultimate extreme choice, but it perfectly aligns with her current terrifying downward spiral. If we really dive into the mechanics of how Willow might actually eliminate Kai, it becomes even more chilling to contemplate. Willow is not a seasoned mobster. She is not going to order a violent hit in a dark, rainy alley. If she decides to cross that ultimate moral line, it will be calculated, clinical, and specifically designed to look like a tragic, unavoidable accident. Maybe she tampers with his vehicle, or maybe she uses her extensive medical knowledge to stage a fatal, untraceable overdose? The sheer sociopathic coldness required to look a young man in the eye and then secretly orchestrate his demise is terrifying, but it is exactly the kind of dark, fascinating evolution we are witnessing with her character right now. And let us be brutally honest about how this specific television genre actually works. Kai is a recurring character. He is a supporting player in the grand, overarching chessboard of this show. That makes him highly, dangerously expendable. Writers absolutely love to use characters exactly like Kai as sacrificial lambs to propel the emotional journey of the main contract cast. Killing him off would instantly, dramatically raise the stakes for Willow, proving to the audience exactly how dangerous she has become, while simultaneously throwing Trina right back into a dark, inescapable vortex of grief. It is a terrifyingly plausible scenario that fits the soap opera formula perfectly. Imagine the impending scene with me for a moment. Trina has been working so incredibly hard to help Drew, communicating in secret, planning every single meticulous detail with Kai. She genuinely thinks they are finally going to win this battle. She rushes to meet him, her heart full of bright hope, maybe even harboring a little bit of blossoming, undeniable affection for him. The hospital hallway is quiet, far too quiet. The lighting is dim, casting long, ominous, flickering shadows against the sterile walls. The audience sitting at home knows something is horribly wrong long before she ever reaches the door. She pushes the door open, calling his name with a smile. And instead of Kai turning around with that warm, familiar greeting, she finds him lying there, cold, motionless, his bright life completely extinguished before he ever really got a fair chance to live it. There are no dramatic final words, no beautiful cinematic goodbye. Just the harsh, brutal, suffocating reality that the curse has struck again. The visual of Trina collapsing to the cold floor, her agonizing screams echoing in that empty, sterile room, would be another massive, heartbreaking blow for a character who has already endured far too much pain for one lifetime. If this absolute nightmare actually unfolds, Trina is going to have to figure out how to stand up again, and it will be the hardest thing she has ever done. And this is exactly where I think the show might execute a massive pivot and introduce a completely new, unexpected chapter for her. Enter Tristan. We know Tristan is the new, highly skilled doctor in town, and at first glance, he and Trina seem like an incredibly unlikely, almost jarring pairing. He is significantly older, he is firmly established in his intense medical career, and she is a young woman just desperately trying to find her footing in the chaotic music industry. But think about exactly how they could deeply connect. Imagine Tristan is the attending physician on call when Kai is tragically brought in. He fights desperately in the trauma room, pushing himself and his team to the absolute physical and emotional limit to save this young man's life, but he ultimately fails. He has to walk out into the cold waiting room, still wearing his blood-stained scrubs, and deliver the fatal, life-shattering news to Trina. Tristan witnesses her complete and utter psychological breakdown firsthand. The connection between them would absolutely not start with romance. It would start with profound, shared, inescapable grief. Tristan would see the raw, unfiltered, agonizing pain of a woman who has lost entirely too much. Out of sheer human compassion, he might start quietly checking in on her. Not because he is looking for a date, but because he deeply understands the crushing, suffocating weight of failing to save someone's life. He becomes a quiet, steady, unwavering presence in her chaotic world. In a town full of constant betrayal and danger, Tristan could represent absolute safety, emotional maturity, and a calm, quiet harbor for Trina's severely battered soul. Furthermore, what if Tristan has his own dark, tragic backstory that we do not know about yet? In this genre, the best, most effective healers are always the ones who are secretly fundamentally broken themselves. Perhaps Tristan came to this specific hospital to run away from a past where he failed to save his own family. When he looks at Trina, he does not just see a grieving young woman. He sees a haunting mirror reflecting his own unresolved silent agony. This shared resonance of profound loss could create an unbreakable, invisible emotional tether between them. They would not need to explain their dark days to each other. They would just inherently understand the heavy silence that always follows a tragedy. Now, I know some fans might immediately and loudly reject this entire idea because of the noticeable age gap. But guys, age gaps are practically a foundational, load-bearing pillar of soap operas. It is never really about the actual number, it is always about the emotional dynamic. As Tristan spends more time with Trina, he might accidentally discover her incredible, soulful singing voice. He would see this raw, untapped, beautiful potential and immediately become her biggest, most fiercely protective champion. Instead of letting her drown in her dark sorrow, Tristan would gently but firmly push her to channel that immense pain into her music. He would be the one to remind her that her voice is the absolute only weapon she has left against the creeping darkness of the world. He would challenge her to step onto the stage and sing through the bitter tears, turning her unspeakable tragedy into breathtaking art. This kind of slow burn, emotionally grounded, deeply supportive relationship feels so much more organic and earned than just throwing another young, naive guy like Simon into her immediate orbit. Simon might be the easy, predictable, visually expected next step, but Tristan offers something infinitely deeper. He offers genuine healing, moving from mutual understanding to a deep, abiding affection, and eventually to a mature romance, would give Trina a completely different kind of love story. One built on rock-solid stability, rather than youthful, chaotic turbulence. But let me stop myself right here, take a deep breath, and play devil's advocate against my own brain. Am I just projecting my own absolute worst fears onto the screen? I have to ask myself, does the show really truly need to torture Trina again? Maybe I am giving Willow entirely too much credit as a criminal master. Maybe Kai is much smarter, far more resourceful, and vastly more aware of his surroundings than I am assuming. What if Kai actually outsmarts Willow? What if he exposes her dark crimes to the world before she even has a chance to execute her deadly strike? It is entirely possible that this whole dark theory is just my anxiety talking, and the writers are actually planning a triumphant, joyous victory for Trina and Kai. We also have to deeply consider that the audience might be suffering from severe trauma fatigue when it comes to Trina. Watching her cry, agonizing tears over yet another lost love might just be entirely too much for the viewers to stomach at this point. Maybe, just maybe, Kai actually survives this terrifying ordeal. Maybe they manage to brilliantly save Drew, completely take down Willow, and actually get to enjoy a peaceful, romantic, uninterrupted sunset together. The idea of Trina having to start completely over with Tristan, no matter how comforting and stable he might be, is honestly exhausting to even think about after everything she has survived. At the end of the day, all this is just my own wild analytical speculation, weaving together the dark, threatening threads the writers have deliberately left dangling in front of us. There is absolutely no official confirmation that Kai is doomed to die, that Willow will cross that ultimate, unforgivable line, or that Tristan is destined to step in and be Trina's new savior. I am just looking at the narrative board and seeing the dangerous, high-stakes moves being played in real time. But honestly, I truly, deeply hope I am dead wrong about the curse. After everything Trina has endured, after all the bitter tears and the heartbreaking goodbyes, the one thing she truly deserves is not another beautifully written, tragic storyline. What she deserves is just a little bit of uninterrupted, boring, absolutely wonderful happiness. But in this town, is that even possible?
Goodbye. Please like, subscribe, and comment on the GH Spoilers Daily channel.